I'm Rachel Whitaker, 33 years old, and I walked into my cousin's wedding alone, wearing a navy blue dress I had once felt proud to buy, but suddenly felt too formal, too noticeable. The moment I stepped through the ballroom doors, the chatter dipped just slightly enough for me to feel it. I caught my sister's voice from across the room. She couldn't even find a date, she whispered to her husband, thinking I wouldn't hear. My mother's face shifted into that tight-lipped smile she always wears when she's embarrassed for me. My father looked right through me. By the time I made it to the far side of the room, I was holding back tears. And then the main door swung open behind me, and every head turned. Before I go any further, let me know where you're tuning in from, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever walked into a room and felt like you didn't belong there. I grew up just outside of Hartford, Connecticut, in a split-level house where the walls were thin and the expectations even thinner. My parents, Denise and Gerald Whitaker, believed in hard work, polite manners, and sticking to the path that made sense. I was always the dependable daughter, careful, steady, invisible when I needed to be. My younger sister, Allison, arrived like a firecracker, blonde curls, easy charm, and the kind of presence that drew attention without trying. She danced ballet. I did debate club. She dated the quarterback. I got into Cornell on a full scholarship. But no one ever put our trophies side by side. Why can't you loosen up like Allison became the phrase I heard most often from middle school through college. When she got engaged to Daniel Prescott, my parents celebrated like they'd won the lottery. When I got promoted to senior marketing manager at Solari Tech, my mom responded with, "That's nice, sweetie. So do you think you'll ever move back here?" I've spent the last 10 years building a life in Boston. My apartment is small but quiet. I have a favorite coffee shop. I know the neighbors by name. The city moves fast, but I found a rhythm. I threw myself into work after my breakup with Evan, a 3-year relationship that ended with me discovering a string of messages between him and his project manager. It just kind of happened, he'd said, like, that made it better. After that, I stopped dating. I stayed late at the office. I picked up solo hobbies, yoga, photography, hiking trails up in the Berkshires. I built a life that felt calm, if not exactly full. When Cousin Emily's wedding invitation arrived in the mail, I held it for a long time before opening it. Cream cardstock, gold trim, +1 optional. I almost asked a friend from work to come with me just for appearances, but it felt like too much effort for the wrong reasons. I picked out a dress that flattered me without trying too hard, had my hair trimmed the week before, and told myself I was going as myself, not to prove anything. The pre-wedding events were expected. At the bridal shower, Aunt Patricia gave Emily a silk nightgown and turned to me with a wink. "We'll get you one once you've got a reason to wear it." They all laughed. I smiled like I always do. Olivia, my best friend, offered to call one of those services a date for hire. "Just show up with someone tall, nice-looking, and expensive," she joked. But I told her no. I was done faking things just to avoid being talked about. That morning, I took my time getting ready. Loose curls, soft makeup, that dress. I looked in the mirror and said out loud, "You're capable. You're complete." It was meant to be a confidence boost. It sounded a little like a prayer. The Plaza Ballroom was stunning golden chandeliers, pale pink roses, soft music from a string quartet. I walked in, and the shift in the air was immediate. The singles table was just as awkward as I'd expected. A teenage cousin who never looked up from his phone, a twice-divorced distant relative with too much cologne, and an elderly woman who asked loudly if I was too busy with work to find a man. I laughed politely. I didn't answer. Allison arrived in a blush pink dress with shoes that probably cost more than my plane ticket. Daniel followed, checking his phone. "Smart dress," she told me. "You can wear it again to a work meeting." My mom kissed my cheek. "You look fine, Rachel. Really." The pity in her voice made my stomach turn. Then the DJ called for all the single women to line up for the bouquet toss. I tried to stay seated. 3 aunts nudged me forward. "Maybe it'll be your lucky day," one of them chirped. I stood there with a fake smile surrounded by 20-somethings in pastel chiffon, feeling every year of my age and every ache of being on my own. And that's when it happened. The double doors opened. The music faltered, and someone unexpected stepped inside. The music softened just as the bouquet reached its peak in the air. But before it could land, a hush spread through the room. I turned toward the doors instinctively, along with everyone else. A man had just stepped into the ballroom, tall, dark, tailored suit, confident without trying too hard. He looked out over the crowd like he was walking into a boardroom, not a wedding. His eyes scanned the room once, then stopped on me. He walked straight toward me. By the time he reached my side, I could feel the air shift around us, eyes watching, conversations pausing. He leaned in, lowered his voice, just enough for me to hear. "Sorry I'm late, love. Traffic was a nightmare." Then he kissed my cheek, light careful like it wasn't his first time. I stood there frozen, stunned into silence. His cologne was warm, subtle, familiar in a way I couldn't place. "Play along," he whispered. "You look like you needed a hand. I'll explain later." I didn't answer, but I didn't pull away either. "I thought you weren't going to make it," I heard myself say, steady as if we'd rehearsed it. He smiled, and it changed everything about his face. "And miss this," he said. "Not a chance." His hand found the small of my back as Jessica approached bouquet, forgotten surprise blooming in her expression. "Rachel?" she said. "You didn't say you were bringing someone." "Sebastian Reed," he said smoothly, extending his hand to her. "Apologies for the dramatic entrance. I just wrapped up a business call overseas. Rachel wasn't sure I'd make it in time." Jessica looked between us, still trying to make sense of it. "Any guest of Rachel's is welcome," she said, finally motioning to the planner. "We'll get you seated with her." Just like that, I was ushered away from the singles table and placed up near the front beside the bride's family and longtime friends. Sebastian stayed close calm, completely at ease. Kimberly appeared not long after we sat down. "You didn't say you were seeing anyone," she said, her voice high and flat. "Let alone someone like him." "You never asked," I replied. Sebastian nodded politely. "We've been keeping things quiet," he offered. My mother joined us moments later, practically glowing. "Rachel has always been the thoughtful one," she told him, as if she'd always said it. "Top of her class. Incredibly sharp." Sebastian leaned in while we waited for the salad course. "We should line up our story," he murmured. 3 months, I said softly. "That sounds reasonable. Where'd we meet?" I hesitated, then answered. "The Franklin Foundation Gala. March. Perfect. First date, la belle vie." "You impressed me by not checking your phone once." He smiled. "Nice detail. Also, your name tag's on the gift table." I blinked. "Rachel Whitaker, Senior Marketing Manager," he added. It wasn't hard to fill in the blanks. He toasted me quietly with his glass of water, then turned his attention to the best man's speech. I took a long sip of wine, trying to calm the nerves still fluttering in my stomach. I had no idea who this man truly was, but I knew one thing: no one had looked at me the way he did. Not in a very long time. Later at the buffet line, he offered to carry my plate. When we sat back down, he asked about my work. I told him about my last campaign, the one that boosted client response by nearly 30%. He nodded, impressed. "The Horizon campaign," he asked. "With the grandmother building the memorial site. That was yours." I nodded. "Brilliant," he said. We talked about marketing, then art, then small, independent films. The conversation slipped easily from topic to topic like we'd done this before, like none of it was pretend. "You studied abroad?" he asked at one point. "Barcelona, spring semester 2013. He looked surprised. "Me too. ICE Business School." It was a strange coincidence, but neither of us pushed it. Just let the idea settle between us. When the DJ called couples to the dance floor, Sebastian stood and offered his hand. "Shall we?" I nodded and followed. He led with quiet confidence, hand firm, but never forceful. His movements were easy practiced. "You're good at this," I said. "Mandatory classes from age 12, he replied. "My mother insisted." "Well," I said, "she did something right." His smile was brief, thoughtful. The song shifted. So did the air between us. Then Kimberly returned, and she wasn't smiling. "Sebastian," she said, "you're in tech." He nodded. "Bradley's father's looking into new investments. Maybe you two should talk." Sebastian answered with ease, fielding questions like he'd done it 100 times before. Kimberly's expression narrowed. "And where did you say you two met again?" "The Franklin Foundation Gala," he answered, not missing a beat. She didn't reply, just nodded once slowly, then walked away. My mother hovered at the edge of the circle, watching us carefully. "He might not make it," she said, turning to Sebastian. "Something about Tokyo." Sebastian smiled. Singapore. Negotiations ended just in time for the last flight. Her eyes lit up. My father approached next. "I hear you work in software security," he said. "We've been meaning to update our systems." Sebastian stepped into the conversation smoothly, speaking with my father like they'd met years ago, and I stood there watching, realizing something strange was happening. Not just the attention, but the way I felt being seen, not questioned. Back at the table, he handed me a glass of wine without asking. It was my favorite kind. "This is ridiculous," I said quietly. "They're treating me like a different person." "No," he said. "They're finally seeing what was always there." He excused himself to take a call. Something about his business partner. I nodded. Said I understood. Kimberly appeared almost instantly. "You expect me to believe this is real," she said. "You show up alone. Then suddenly you've got one of the wealthiest men in the country holding your hand." "We've kept things private," I said. She folded her arms. "It's not adding up, Rachel." I didn't reply. I didn't owe her an explanation. Sebastian returned minutes later and slipped his arm around my waist again like it belonged there. We danced again, talked quietly. He told me his younger brother thought his success was handed to him. I told him I understood that weight, that feeling of being measured against someone else's bar. Over dessert, he passed me a napkin. Our hands brushed. The warmth lingered longer than I expected. Then his phone buzzed again. Urgent. He glanced at the screen, his expression tightening. "It's the Singapore team," he said quietly. "Something's come up." I nodded. He looked at me for a long moment. "I'll be back," he said. "Please believe me." I didn't answer. I just watched him walk away. Inside, Jessica was giving a toast. Then the mic passed around the tables. Kimberly looked at me expectant. I felt my heart racing. But before I could say a word, I heard his voice behind me. I'd be happy to. Sebastian had returned. He spoke briefly but clearly, lifted a glass to Jessica and Tyler, then turned just slightly and met my eyes. "To real connection," he said, "wherever we find it." The room applauded. He returned to his seat beside me, silent, calm. Then he nodded toward the terrace doors. "Want to step outside?" I followed. The air was cool and quiet, and everything was about to change. We stepped out onto the terrace just beyond the ballroom. The air was cooler than I expected, carrying the scent of cut flowers and the soft rustle of city traffic a few stories below. Lights from Central Park flickered beyond the stone railing. Sebastian leaned on the edge with his hands in his pockets. For a while, we didn't say anything. The quiet wasn't awkward, just full. "I should tell you something," he said finally. I turned toward him. I wasn't planning to stay for the whole reception. I was at the hotel for a meeting. I was leaving when I overheard your sister say something sharp. He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. I recognized you. He continued from the digital marketing conference in Chicago last fall. I looked at him, trying to make sense of the timeline. You gave the keynote, he said. The one on emotional strategy and brand development. Your case study on the Horizon campaign stuck with me. I hadn't expected that. I meant to introduce myself afterward, he said. But your team was swamped and my flight got moved up. When I saw you tonight, I wasn't sure if stepping in would be welcome. But something about your expression... He trailed off. I didn't know how to respond. Then the terrace door opened. Kimberly stepped out, perfectly timed as always. There you are, she said lightly. Mom's looking for you. Something about family photos. We'll be right in, Sebastian said politely. But she didn't move. Her smile stayed fixed. You two seem pretty cozy for just 3 months of dating, she said. Almost like you've known each other longer. Or maybe not at all. I felt my stomach drop. Kim, not now. She looked between us. You didn't tell anyone about him. Mom said the hotel concierge told her he was escorted from a meeting directly to the ballroom, which means she paused. You two met tonight, didn't you? Neither of us said anything. That's what I thought she said. Wait until everyone hears how desperate you were to fake a date. Sebastian stepped in, calm but firm. It wasn't Rachel's idea. I saw what was happening and made the choice to intervene. She gave a short laugh. You're saying you just happened to crash a wedding to save a woman you haven't spoken to in months. Kimberly, I said, stepping back, you don't have to keep going. The story's out now. It's done. Sebastian looked at me. I didn't mean for it to go this way, but tonight none of it felt fake to me. Didn't it, I said. Because it was pretend. That's what we agreed to. His voice was quiet. The things we talked about, the way we connected, I wasn't pretending. I looked down, then back up. I just ended a relationship where pretending was the default, and it ended with me blindsided by a betrayal I didn't see coming. I'm not doing that again. He stepped closer. I'm not him, Rachel. You're not, I said. He at least told me the truth before he left. He winced. Then his phone buzzed again. A man in a dark suit stepped onto the terrace, urgent. Sebastian? I'm sorry, but the Singapore deal's falling apart. The team's waiting. He looked back at me. Can we talk again after I handle this? I didn't answer right away. You should go. He hesitated. Rachel. You have a company to run, I said. He nodded once. I'll be back if you'll let me. Then he turned and followed the man inside. I stayed on the terrace a few minutes longer, letting the breeze settle my thoughts. When I finally re-entered the ballroom, Kimberly was waiting near the doorway. Mom stood beside her. Sebastian just left with another man, Mom said. Is everything okay? I took a breath. He and I met tonight, I said. He overheard Kimberly making comments and stepped in. The business call was real. The rest, we made it up. Mom's face fell. Rachel, why would you lie like that? To your family, I didn't plan it, I said. It just happened. She gave a small sigh. This is exactly what worries us. The marketing job, living alone in Boston, all these impulsive choices. I didn't answer. Across the room, I saw Kimberly whispering to a cousin. Within seconds, the stares began, familiar, heavy. I made my way to the edge of the room, found a quiet spot near the windows, and checked the time. 9:45. Too early to leave without questions. Too late to pretend I still belonged here. By 10:30, I couldn't wait anymore. I walked over to Jessica, who was dancing with Tyler near the center of the floor. I'm not feeling great, I told her. I think I'm going to head out. Her smile dimmed. So early. Is Sebastian business emergency, I said. He sends his apologies. She nodded. Thanks for coming, Rachel. It meant a lot. "Congratulations," I said. "You two looked beautiful." Then I walked out the way I came in, alone. Just before midnight, I finally made it back to my apartment. The city was quieter than usual. I dropped my shoes by the door, left the dress draped across the arm of a chair, and made my way to the kitchen. The first cup of coffee the next morning tasted bitter. I stood by the window as sunlight poured in, waiting for something to shift. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Rachel, it's Sebastian. I got your number from the planner. I'm sorry for last night leaving like that and for how things ended. The business situation was real, but I should have handled it better. I'd still like to talk if you're open to that." I read the message twice, then set the phone down. I didn't know how to answer yet. 20 minutes later, the doorbell rang. It was Olivia standing there with a bakery box and 2 coffees. "Thought you might need carbs," she said. "Tell me everything." And for the first time in a long time, I did. Olivia set the bakery box on my counter and handed me a coffee without asking how I took it. We'd been friends long enough. "All right," she said, pulling off her jacket. "Start at the beginning." Just how bad was it? I leaned against the kitchen island and tried to find the words. I came in alone, got seated at the singles table. Same old comments. Then this guy walked in, Sebastian Reed. Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Wait, the Sebastian Reed tech billionaire invests in green infrastructure and urban housing." I nodded. Her jaw dropped. "And he what pretended to be your boyfriend?" He saw what was happening, heard Kimberly, walked right over like we were already together. And you played along. I didn't have time to think. One second, I'm bracing for another round of pity. Next thing I know, I've got a date with a jawline sharp enough to slice cake. She snorted. "Did he explain himself?" "Later," I said. "On the terrace. Said he remembered me from that conference last fall in Chicago, the one where I spoke on narrative branding. Said he meant to introduce himself but missed his chance." "And you believe him? I don't know." She opened the pastry box. "Well, I'm going to believe him for you. Any man who remembers your blouse color 8 months later isn't faking it." "He left after Kimberly cornered us," I said. "Exposed the whole thing, said it was humiliating and desperate. I told him to go." Olivia paused. "And now?" "He texted this morning. Said he wanted to explain." She nodded slowly, folding a napkin. "Rachel, I know what Evan did left a scar. But this doesn't sound like that. Sebastian didn't lie to hurt you. He lied to protect you from the family who was already hurting you." I didn't answer. Not right away. "Maybe you're not mad at him," she added. "Maybe you're mad that someone saw how hard you've been trying to stand on your own." I took a bite of the croissant and let the quiet settle between us. By mid-afternoon, I knew what I needed to do. I sent Kimberly a text asking to meet for lunch. Somewhere public. Neutral. She agreed within minutes. We met at a cafe halfway between our apartments. I chose a booth near the window. She sat across from me, tucking her sunglasses into her purse. For a while, neither of us said much. Then I spoke. "Last night was hard." She nodded, not looking at me. "It wasn't just what happened with Sebastian. It was everything else, the things you said when I walked in. About my dress. About showing up alone. It's not new, Kim, but I'm done letting it slide." She stirred her tea slowly. "I know. You do." She looked up, and for the first time in years, her face was stripped of performance. "I've been jealous of you, Rachel. For a long time." I sat back. "Jealous? Of me?" "You built something," she said. "A career. A name for yourself. People respect you for your mind. I married someone Dad approved of and spent 5 years pretending I was happy. I blinked. You and Daniel. We're in counseling, she said. But it's not working. He's been with his assistant since January. I found out in March. I exhaled slowly. I didn't know. No one does. I haven't told anyone. I figured if I kept showing up looking the part, I could at least control the story. We sat in silence for a few seconds. I didn't want to be you, she said. But I didn't want to be me either. I always thought Mom and Dad favored you, I said quietly, and that I had to prove myself twice as hard just to earn a seat at the table. They did favor me, she replied, but only when I was what they expected. Marriage, appearances. When I veered from that, they didn't know what to do. We stayed at that table for almost 2 hours, talking, not arguing, peeling back years of assumptions, of silence. When the conversation shifted, she reached for her purse, paused, then said, "I'm sorry for what I did last night, calling you out." I was angry and bitter. It was cruel, I said. She nodded. It was. But it forced me to see what I'd become, and I don't like it. She looked at me carefully. "Do you think you'll see him again?" I didn't answer right away. "I saw the way he looked at you," she added. "That wasn't acting." I left the cafe unsure of where we stood as sisters, but more sure of who I was. My next stop was Westchester. The house looked the same as always, white shutters, navy door, neatly trimmed hedges. My mother answered wearing her favorite cardigan, the one with the embroidered collar. "Rachel," she said, "is something wrong?" "I'd like to talk," I said. "All of us." My father joined us in the living room. The fireplace hadn't been used in years, but it still smelled faintly of ash and wood. I stood across from them. "I've spent a lot of years trying to win your approval," I said, "getting degrees, promotions, showing up at weddings alone and still putting on a smile." They listened, saying nothing. I thought maybe I was imagining things, that the way you treated me versus Kimberly was just in my head. "But after this weekend, I can't pretend anymore," my mother frowned. "Rachel, we've always wanted the best for you. You wanted what made sense to you," I said. "Not what I wanted, not what made me happy." My father shifted in his chair. "Your mother worried, that's all. She worried I'd be alone," I said. "But I'm not lonely. I have friends, a career, a life, and maybe now something more. I need you both to see that." To my surprise, my father nodded. "She's right," he said quietly. "We pushed Kimberly toward Daniel, toward that world. We thought it would give her security. And Rachel," he added, looking at me, "we didn't understand what you were building, but we do now." My mother's expression softened. She reached for my hand. "We never meant to make you feel like you had to earn our love." I didn't say anything, but something in the room shifted. The air lightened. No grand apology, no guarantees, just the beginning of a new way forward. Later on the drive back into the city, my phone buzzed. "Jessica, just wanted to say thank you for coming," she said. "And Sebastian called this morning, asked for your number." I glanced at the message I'd left unanswered. "I didn't give it out," she added. "I told him to reach out directly if it mattered." As I pulled into the garage under my building, I saw him, Sebastian, standing near the elevator, hands in his coat pockets, no suit, no pretense. When he saw me, he smiled, small, steady, and everything in me stilled. I stepped out of my car and walked slowly toward the elevator. Sebastian was standing near the building entrance, shoulders relaxed, coat unbuttoned, hands tucked into his pockets. The city buzzed around us, but he didn't look away. "Hi," I said. "Hey," he replied. "Thank you for not calling security." I smiled faintly. "How'd you know where I live, Jessica?" he said. I asked. She hesitated, but eventually gave in. "I wanted to talk to you properly, not through a screen." I nodded once, then unlocked the main door and held it open. "Come up, we'll talk inside." The elevator ride was quiet, but not tense, just filled with things waiting to be said. I handed him a glass of water once we were inside. We sat on opposite ends of the couch. A small stack of mail sat untouched on the coffee table between us. "I'm sorry about how things ended that night," he said. "About the way I left. I believe the emergency was real," I said. "You don't have to explain that." He set the glass down. "I want to explain it all, not just the business part." I waited. "I've thought about that conference a lot," he said. "Not just because of the content, though your presentation was brilliant. You carried yourself differently than most of the other speakers. You didn't perform. You spoke like someone who believed what she was saying." He paused. "When I saw you at the wedding, I remembered immediately, and then I saw how your sister treated you." That one comment was enough. I let out a slow breath. "So you just stepped in?" "I didn't plan to," he said, "but I knew what I was seeing, and I didn't want to walk away again without saying something. You could have just introduced yourself, said you recognized me." He smiled just a little. That would have been the reasonable thing to do. But in that moment, I wasn't thinking about reason. I was thinking about how to shift the power in the room. I looked at him carefully. "You said some things on the terrace, that it wasn't all pretend. I meant it," he said. "Every word." Neither of us spoke for a while. He leaned forward. "I'm not here to pick up where we left off. I'm not asking you to forget what happened. I'm asking for a chance, a real one. No backstory, no act." I looked down at my hands, then back at him. "I'm scared," I said. He nodded. "That makes sense. After Evan, I stopped letting people in. It was easier, simpler, safer," he said, "but also lonelier." He waited. "One dinner," I said quietly. "No pretending we've already lived something, just a beginning." His smile was slow, steady. "I'd like that very much." He reached for my hand, but didn't rush it. Just let it rest gently over mine. We sat like that for a few moments, the city moving quietly outside my window. Our first real date was the following Thursday, a small Italian place near the East Village, candlelight, cloth napkins, a waiter who clearly recognized Sebastian but didn't say anything. We talked about everything and nothing, our favorite books, childhood road trips, the first jobs we hated. No interruptions, no scripts. When the staff began clearing empty tables, we realized how late it had gotten. Our second date was at an indie film screening downtown. We stayed after to hear the director speak. He loved the ending. I didn't. We argued on the walk home, then stopped at a cafe and kept talking. By the time we left, the disagreement had faded, but the connection hadn't. 6 weeks in, we had our first real disagreement. He canceled dinner last minute, something urgent at the company, unavoidable. In the past, I would have let it slide. Told myself to be easy, not complicated, but I didn't. I told him it hurt, that I needed to feel prioritized. He listened, really listened. Then he apologized and asked how we could handle things better the next time. That conversation stayed with me longer than the ones where everything went smoothly. Olivia met him not long after. They talked over dinner about climate law and policy reform. When he asked thoughtful questions and listened like he wasn't just being polite, she caught my eye across the table and nodded once. Later, she said quietly, "He sees people, not just who they are in public, but who they are when they think no one's watching." He introduced me to Maxwell, his business partner. We sat in the back of their office's rooftop lounge one evening while they walked through a proposal draft. I offered a few marketing suggestions. They took notes. 2 weeks later, when the platform launched, one of my ideas was part of the final rollout. It wasn't a token gesture. It was respect. 2 months in, I invited him to dinner at my parents' house. Nothing fancy. Just grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, my mom's favorite chocolate cake. This time the difference in tone was quiet, but clear. My father asked questions, real ones, about Sebastian's work, about mine. My mother complimented the wine he brought, then asked for the name of the vineyard. There were no grand speeches, just space. Space I hadn't been given before. When Sebastian stepped out to take a call, my mom turned to me. "He's thoughtful," she said. "You seem settled with him." "I am." She reached for the cake platter. "I'm sorry we made you feel like you needed someone to prove your worth." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Some shifts don't come with explanations. They just come. The next morning, Sebastian texted a picture of the pie we'd baked together sitting on his kitchen counter. "Thanksgiving ready," the message said. It was mid-November. We'd been seeing each other for 6 months. That evening, as he picked me up to drive to my parents' house, he paused at the passenger door and looked at me. "You ready?" I smiled. "As I'll ever be." He reached into the back seat, pulled out the pie, and we walked up the steps together. The house smelled like rosemary and cinnamon. Kimberly opened the door. Her eyes were clearer, lighter. Daniel wasn't with her. "Mom's been waiting on that pie all morning," she said. "No pressure." Inside the table was already set, candles lit, napkins folded. My dad opened the wine. My mother hugged Sebastian like she'd done it before. We passed plates, shared stories, and somewhere between the stuffing and dessert, I realized something. This wasn't a performance anymore. This was my life. The Sunday after Thanksgiving, Sebastian and I took a walk through Prospect Park. The last of the leaves clung to the trees in soft shades of amber and rust, crunching gently under our shoes. I had my hands tucked into the sleeves of my coat. He carried 2 coffees, one for me, light cream, no sugar, just the way I liked it. We passed a woman teaching her toddler how to throw breadcrumbs to ducks. A group of joggers looped around the bend. The world kept moving, but inside that quiet walk, I felt something I hadn't in a long time, peace that wasn't borrowed or conditional. He stopped at the edge of the lake and turned toward me. "My parents are flying in for Christmas," he said. "They'd like to meet you." I looked at him for a moment, unsure how to respond. "I know it soon," he added. "No pressure. I just want them to know the person who's become the best part of my year." He didn't ask for an answer right away, just offered his hand and we kept walking. That following week, I helped him prepare for the launch of a new privacy tool his company had been developing for over a year. We sat on his living room floor, surrounded by mock-ups and message drafts, editing late into the evening. Somewhere around midnight, I made a quiet suggestion about shifting the tone of the campaign, focusing less on fear, more on empowerment. He paused, nodded, and made the change. When the final version went out, he credited the shift in tone to a perspective that reminded us people are more than data. He didn't say my name. He didn't have to. By mid-December, we'd found a rhythm. Weeknights were a mix of shared dinners and separate work, comfortable silences, and familiar playlists. Weekends were longer, lazy mornings, neighborhood markets, long walks that didn't require conversation to feel connected. Then one Thursday evening, as we were finishing dinner, my phone rang. It was Kimberly. "Hey," I answered. "Everything okay?" "I'm fine," she said. "But I signed the separation papers today." I set my fork down. "We've been living in different places for over a month," she said. "It's just time." There wasn't any breakdown in her voice, no anger either, just a quiet acceptance I hadn't heard from her before. "I'm enrolling in the interior design program at Parsons this spring," she added. "Figured I'd give that dream another try." "That's good, Kim," I said. "Really good." "Thanks," she said. "And I'm glad things are working out for you. With Sebastian, I hope Mom and Dad are showing it better these days." "They're trying," I said. "They're slow," she replied, "but not blind." That weekend, Sebastian and I were invited to a friend's holiday gathering. His business partner, Maxwell, was hosting. A dozen people crowded into the penthouse lounge, dressed in sweaters and slacks, laughter spilling from the kitchen. I stayed near the bar at first, unsure of my place in that world. But as the night went on, the edges softened. Maxwell's wife leaned over at one point and whispered, "He's lighter with you around. You ground him." We left just after midnight. Coats zipped cheeks pink from the cold. When we reached my door, he paused. "There's a wedding in June," he said. "Maxwell's cousin." I nodded. "We'll both be invited," he added. "This time we'll walk in together." I smiled. No borrowed stories. Just us. He reached for my hand warm through my gloves. Exactly. That Sunday morning I visited my parents again. My mother greeted me with a fresh pot of coffee already brewing. My dad was reading the paper glasses low on his nose. "Sebastian's privacy platform launched last week," I told them. "It's already received 2 awards. "That's impressive," my father said. "It was Rachel's idea," my mother added quietly. "The messaging shift." My father looked up. "Is that right?" I nodded. "Well," he said, folding the paper, "maybe next time you'll pitch us on something. Our company could use a few bright ideas." There was no sarcasm in his tone, just interest. Real grounded interest. Later that afternoon, as we packed up leftovers and old photos, my mother paused in the hallway. "You were right," she said, "about needing to let you be who you are." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. That evening, driving back toward the city, Sebastian turned down the radio. "My parents are hosting a New Year's dinner," he said. "Quiet, just them, maybe some neighbors." He glanced at me. "Would you come?" I met his eyes. "I'd like that." We crossed the bridge just as the skyline came into view, lights shimmering in the early winter dusk. The wind picked up, brushing against the windshield, but inside the car it was warm and steady. Sebastian pulled into my parents' driveway just after noon. A low winter sun hung over the neighborhood, casting long shadows across the front lawn. He shifted into park, turned off the engine, and looked over at me. "You sure you're ready for round 2? He asked, grinning. I reached for the pie dish balanced on my lap, our second attempt at my mother's pumpkin recipe. Ready as I'll ever be. We stepped up onto the porch together. The rocking chairs were still in their usual places. The flag hung motionless in the still air. Before I could ring the bell, the front door opened. "Rachel," Kimberly said, pulling me into a quick hug. "She's been pacing since 8 this morning. No pressure, but that pie better be good." Sebastian laughed. "Well, I promise the crust is better than last time. She let me help this time." Kimberly smiled at him, genuine easy. "That's because she likes you now." Inside the house was warm with the smell of roasted vegetables and baked bread. My mother appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. "There you are," she said, reaching for the pie. "It smells perfect." She leaned in and kissed Sebastian's cheek like it was second nature. "You're part of the family now," she told him, ushering us in. My dad stood by the fireplace, his usual reserved expression softened by something close to pride. "Rachel was just telling us about your new campaign," he said. "The privacy platform. Sounds like a smart move." Sebastian nodded. "It was Rachel's insight, actually. The whole approach changed when she reframed how we were talking about user trust." My mother glanced over from the sideboard. She's always had that skill, seeing what others miss. We took our seats around the dining table, candles lit down the center napkins, folded with care. The conversation moved easily from Kimberly's new design classes to Dad's recent retirement to my mother's volunteer work at the local library. When it came time for dessert, my dad raised his glass. To family, he said simply, and to showing up for each other, even when it takes us a while to get there. Kimberly nudged me under the table. I didn't say anything, just smiled and let the moment settle. After dinner, Sebastian stepped into the den to take a quick call about a system patch. My mother leaned toward me across the table. "He's good for you?" she said. I nodded, but more importantly, she added, "You seem good for yourself." I looked at her. "It's taken a while." "I know," she said softly. "And I'm sorry we didn't make that easier." Later, as we drove back toward the city, Sebastian reached across the center console and took my hand. "Your dad's pie commentary was the highlight of my day," he said. I laughed. He's not one for small talk, but baked goods are his love language. He glanced at me. "There's something else I wanted to mention." "Okay, my parents are planning a small Christmas dinner. Just the four of us. They'd love to meet you." I nodded. "I'd like that." He squeezed my hand once. "Also, there's that wedding in June. Maxwell's cousin. I already RSVP'd for both of us." "No dramatic entrances this time," I said. He grinned. "No. This time we'll walk in like normal people." We hit a patch of silence that wasn't awkward, just full. He drove one-handed, our palms still pressed together. As the skyline came into view, he spoke again. "There might be another wedding after that." I turned my head toward him. "You mean someone else's?" His eyes stayed on the road, but his voice was steady. "I mean us." I didn't say anything, just let the words sit in the air between us. It wasn't a proposal, not yet, but it didn't have to be. Sometimes a life starts to form long before the official beginning, in late-night conversations, shared errands, Sunday dinners where the room feels different, not because it changed, but because you did. Back in the apartment, I set the pie dish in the sink and turned to find him leaning against the kitchen door frame. "You're staring," I said, "just taking in the view." I flicked off the light and crossed the room toward him. Sebastian reached for my hand as I stepped into the hallway. The apartment was quiet, dimly lit calm. The kind of calm that comes after a long day, a full table, and a lot of years spent waiting to feel seen. We didn't talk much that night. We didn't need to. He fell asleep with his arm around me, his breathing even. Outside the window, the city lights blinked softly against the dark. I lay awake for a little while, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how different everything looked now. 6 months ago, I walked into a wedding alone. I had braced myself for another evening of whispered judgments and forced smiles, just like all the times before. I'd sat through dinners where my accomplishments were reduced to polite nods, while my sister's life was celebrated like a highlight reel. I'd built a life by myself, but still carried the weight of not being enough for them, for anyone. And yet that day when the doors opened and Sebastian walked in, something shifted. Not because he fixed it all, but because that moment forced everything into the light. I had spent years dimming myself just to fit, lowering my voice, softening my edges. That night, I finally saw what it felt like to be valued without shrinking. The real change didn't come with a man walking into the room. It came afterward, when I stood up for myself at that lunch with Kimberly, when I told the truth to my parents, when I asked for what I needed instead of swallowing it down. The love that followed wasn't something I had to chase or prove. It showed up because I stopped hiding the parts of myself that wanted more. I think that's the part no one tells you when you're younger. That sometimes the hardest thing isn't being alone, it's learning to stand alone without apology. And that when you do, the people who matter will find you. Or you'll find each other somewhere in the quiet space after all the pretending ends. A few weeks after Christmas, I got an email from a former colleague. She was hosting a panel on storytelling and tech and asked if I'd speak. I said yes. Not because I needed the recognition, but because I finally understood the story I wanted to tell. Kimberly came to that panel, sat right in the front row. Afterward, she waited by the door holding a small notebook and smiling. "You were incredible," she said. We walked out into the cold evening together, two women who had learned in very different ways that healing doesn't always look like a second chance. It often looks like starting fresh. Sometimes justice doesn't arrive in big dramatic waves. It comes quietly, in conversations that go differently than they used to, in dinners where your voice carries without interruption, in the soft click of a front door closing behind someone who chooses to come back again and again. And sometimes the life you thought would never come finds you, not because you followed all the rules, but because you finally broke the ones that kept you small. If this story meant something to you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Maybe you've had a moment where standing alone helped you find your strength. Or maybe someone unexpected changed everything just by showing up. Either way, thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes the most beautiful beginnings come right after you stop pretending.